Hi everybody, welcome to the Cocoon Rainbow Serpent. How are you all feeling? Awesome. So we're here for the panel, A Woman's Way in Music, Art, Industry and Culture, and I'm super excited to, and feel very honoured to be able to be here hosting and emceeing that space to provide a space for these incredible women to share their stories. We're going to begin with introductions and a few questions, and we will open the floor up, the mic up to you all soon. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge a few things. The first thing is that the names on the board have shifted slightly, so I'm just going to take a moment to name the incredible people who are here on this panel. So we have Legan here. We have Lynne Donnelly. We have Raquel Kerr. We have Phillips. And we have Quirk. And you'll find out more about each of these women in a moment. They're going to introduce themselves, but they're all incredible and beautiful representations of different areas of music, art, industry, and culture. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are currently sitting, dancing, loving, gifting, moving, and befriending people on sacred land, on the land of the Wurrung and the Wurrung people, and to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, to be in gratitude for our privilege to be allowed to be here and to be sharing this space, and to acknowledge the stories, the art, the music, and the culture of the past, the present, and the future in that. So, thank you. So, my name is Fleassy Malay, and I would love to take a moment. We're going to let each of these women introduce themselves and then begin a discussion around this stuff. And I'd love to begin first. I'm just going to go along the line, if that's okay, because it chronologically makes sense to me. So I'll begin with myself with a quick intro. I'm a spoken word artist and a women's empowerment and speaker coach based in Melbourne. I'm going to summarize mine pretty quickly. But firstly, here we have, to my left, we have Lucy Legan. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yep, it's on. Yep, you can hear me, great. My name's Lucy Legan. I have been living in Brazil for the last 17 years, working in an ecological centre. And in 2005, I was asked by a large festival, Boom Festival, to come and look at their how to become more sustainable. And I wasn't in the industry, and 2005 I was sort of thrown into the industry, and my focus was how to make festivals more sustainable, because we tend to trash the land, we tend to trash the water. It's an unfortunate part of events, and my passion became that I was going to try to make festivals more sustainable by looking at the gardens, by looking at water source, by looking at the rubbish, how do we recycle it, how do we bring less. So yeah, that's my focus. It's focused on protecting the land, because I also like to celebrate, dance and whatever, but I try to make it more environmentally aware.
Thank you, Lucy. Feel free to be engaging here. Yeah, thank you. This is the conversation, including all of you. So moving on, we have Lynne Donnelly. Lynne, I'd love you to introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's Lynne, and I'm currently the director of the Rainbow Arts and Culture Foundation, and that's the not-for-profit arm of Rainbow. That's been set up to drive art, not just inside the festival, but inside the community that we live on, the Pyrenees Shire, and the Wurrung and the Wurrung countries. So that's a really exciting new project. But how I got to here was I'm one of the founders of Rainbow Serpent Festival, so I was involved right from the start. And I was one of the few female promoters in Melbourne in the 90s and early millennium. So I also founded Earth Dance, which was a global party for peace that was very big for a decade in Melbourne and around the world. And so my career, I suppose, has spanned the music side of events and also now the art side of events. So I'm really privileged to have been working creatively really for the last 25 years and still here.
Thank you. Raquel.
Hey. Hi, so I'm Raquel Kerr. I'm a judge of Wurrung, Barapa Bunurong Palawa woman. My initial focus of work is in cultural heritage protection and legislation. I'm one of the first female appointed Aboriginal heritage officers, which looks at legislational enforcement and compliance. I also sit on a couple of advisory committees to the Minister around culture and engagement with Aboriginal people and wider education. I'm also a dancer, a performer, an artist, in which I work very closely to the lovely lady right next to me in revitalising and helping educate about Djadja culture and who we are as a people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Beck Phillips. Hi.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Beck, and I'm a Djadja, Wurrung and Pangarang woman from Central and Northeast Victoria. I'm also Macedonian English Australian on my father's side. I'm here working in a way, so I'm the Karang La coordinator, the Aboriginal space up there, just coordinating the workshops and the ceremonies, and I work for in the environment and working with teaching government how to work with Aboriginal people, and I kind of just fell into this role here at Rainbow maybe 6 years ago, and I've just been working on getting the Aboriginal inclusion throughout the whole festival, a festival that has an Aboriginal dreaming being name. It's just about kind of helping us all walk that, plus many other things, and I can't quite remember right now after 4 ceremonies today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Ginny Quirk. I'm an events worker and I work on festivals across Australia and represent a couple of musicians. And I'm currently here working in the Lifestyle Village as the 2IC. Yeah.
Well done.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ginny. Thank you. I just want to take a moment to name that every woman sitting on this panel is part of the reason this festival is happening, and how enlivening that is to have such incredible women holding this festival up and keeping this festival going. So thank you on that level. Can we give a big round of applause for that level of it? So personally, I was sitting with the title of this panel, and was something that the first question I really wanted to begin with, and I'm happy to just throw the question out there and have whoever wants to speak just kind of step forward and take the microphone. It's not in order, but I guess for me, I want to just get right in there, and for me, what is the significance of having women's voices in music, in art, in industry, and culture for you personally? What is that significance for you? Because we're here at a panel, we're very specific, a specific gender, a specific industry, an area. So why is that significant to you? Yeah, go ahead.
Did anyone else want to say? I couldn't see. Did you? No, you.
Don't be polite, please. Just grab the microphone. There's plenty of time and space for each of you.
I think that I feel it's about collaboration. Women are collaborators, and none of it sits by itself. So we've got an industry that is overarching across multiple platforms, multiple ways of doing things, multiple artists, and it's a very collaborative space. If you put on an event, it's people being together, working together. It doesn't function without communication, and I think without women, seriously, I don't think a lot would happen. We are organisers, we are empathetic, we are communicators, we are highly skilled, we multitask, we often put our egos away to get things done, and I think that's one of, and we're also highly creative beings, as all people are, but we allow that to emerge. So I think that we play a very significant part in a growing and dynamic and amazing creative and cultural industry. You wouldn't be able to do it without us, I don't think.
Beautiful, thank you. And my inquiry in that, just to go a little bit deeper, is on a personal level for you as a woman. Is there something in there as well? Or is it more just like, I love the talking about the wider scale of the collaboration.
Yep.
I'm just inviting you, if there's anything in the personal experience as being a woman, to having women there.
I think collaboration is what makes things special. So the opportunity to work cooperatively with people actually is what enriches your practice, whether you're an individual artist or someone that works with artists or in the environment part of a festival or in any part of the festival. So on a personal level, I think that I've had a better working life because I've been able to collaborate with so many amazing women with so many diverse skills.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah. Does anybody else feel either inspired by? Yep.
Yeah, I'll say something. Yeah, I think that music industry's always been pretty male dominated traditionally. So even since I've been working in events throughout Australia, it's been really refreshing to see that, particularly in management roles, more and more women taking that on and creating that balance throughout a festival, to be represented that way, whether it's as a musician or as an event worker. And I've got to say, there's been a lot of comments this rainbow about the fact that people are noticing that there's a lot more women in management, and that there's quite a female energy around that here, which I think ultimately is just going to create a better balance for all of us. And I think it also, to see for younger women, to see strong women, forging forward and, working with men on this collaborative level is a really positive step forward for music in general.
Beautiful, thank you. Does anybody else feel inspired by what's been said or want to share their own experience?
It's curious for me because a lot of my work at festivals, I arrive 1 month to 3 months before the festival starts. So I'm on site with mostly males. And I always, because I'm also a grandma, my energy is always, and there's my grandson Ravi. Hey Ravi, he's watching. Because I'm a grandma, it brings a certain energy and confusion for them because I'm a strong woman. I'm a grandma, and their idea of where grandmas shouldn't be working, lugging around soil and planting things. But it also brings a certain softness that and also because I'm quite demanding. So it's a softness with a demanding. So I make sure that, the machinery doesn't drive around too fast. There's certain things like, when you're building up, there's that adrenaline. Everyone's like, yeah, we've got to get this done. 3 or 4 days to go. And then having my energy here, I can swerve some of that male eagerness to be macho, and that I know that's appreciated by other coordinators because, and I get away with it because I'm a grandma. It's a good thing.
Beautiful. For me, I'm just going to reflect back a point in that really stood out for me, and that is the breaking down of the stereotypes of what it is to be a woman or what it is to be a grandma or what it is to be whatever representation that we are identifying as that we are representing. That actually when you see women out doing work, living life, doing roles that were once reserved only for men, it actually breaks down a lot of those stereotypes that we have been put into. And so thank you for being part of that change, because I really believe in that we living it is actually changing the world for other people. So thank you. Beautiful. Beck, do you want to share something?
Yeah, I guess what the conversation has led me into thinking about is more about balance. That's what I think of when the importance of women's voices is mentioned. A lot of women in my family and a lot of beautiful women I know are people that always put themselves last. And so when you shift yourself into that position, you have a completely different perspective on things and how you work with people. And, sadly, if you haven't got another one of those women around to help nurture the one who's putting themselves last, they do kind of burn out. But they're so valuable and reliable and give you stability. Women, they hold our communities together. And so we need to hear their voice. We need to hear the supportive things, the I love yous, the try agains, the stern, rip you when you muck up. We got some guys out there and they will muck up and muck up and muck up, and it comes to an auntie and she just got to look at them, and they just pull up straight away, so there's a certain power that our aunties hold, and it's same like you're saying, that grandma energy, and Malay Hakua on the market stage had just given us a little demonstration of that. I think it's really important to keep us all in line and keep us nurtured and keep us, I think what you said too, Lynn, keep the ego out of it. And sometimes we can not be so supportive, women, and be competitive. And I really don't like that. And I think if we don't have strong women around us, then that breeds this competitiveness. And to me, that's not being a woman. Being a woman is about a sisterhood where we support each other to carry out our important roles in our community. Yeah.
Thank you, Beck. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to pull out a couple of points there that really stood out for me, and the balance idea. And I think that this concept of not just balancing the amount of the different types of gender identities that are being represented in industry, but also balancing how we're showing up, again, as women on this panel, with the fierceness, with the gentleness, this gentle, fierce balance. And actually there not being shame around that. And actually there's incredibleness in our fierceness. There's strength in our fierceness. And there is strength in the kind of the slowing things down and the love and the softness, and I really appreciate that being brought up as a topic. And the other thing that really stood out for me again is your comment on the competition and women and I think that's a social thing as well. It's not just based in the one community. I think it's something that actually women have been taught.
Yeah, I meant on a broader scale.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a really important point that just so thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Would you like to share, Raquel?
I think as a younger female, particularly as a traditional owner, there's a lot of apprehension. Like personally, there has always been a bit of apprehension to start off with. Firstly, being as young as you are, and secondly, like Becca said, if you don't have that support network of strong women around you, you don't feel embodied enough to speak up. And like I look at people like my younger sisters, I have 2 younger sisters, and making sure that they're able to feel that empowerment, because like it's bringing that balance back in. Like, we've come into a society where it's acceptable for, it's a boys thing, it's a boys club. And then to actually turn around and go, actually, no, this is why we're here. And it's also to bring that grounding back as well. Because ideas get thrown around and, things get lifted off way further than what they should be, and we need those people to bring it back. And it comes back to the mum mentality, the nan mentality, the auntie mentality. And I think from that, it's just more about pushing forward.
Beautiful, thank you. And I'm hearing a lot of archetypes coming through as well, this concept of the auntie, and then we're not just talking about actual grandmas and actual aunties and actual mothers, but we're talking about an archetypal feeling and energy as well, which I really like, so thank you. What's kind of beginning to come up here is it kind of leads me into my next inquiry, which is the kind of challenges that we face as women in these industries. And I'd love to hear either your personal experiences, if you fear to share them, or otherwise just things that you witness as what is a challenge or obstacle that you see happening in perhaps your area or your experience of music, art, industry and culture as a woman, and where the challenges are for women in that area. If you want to share personally, you're welcome to. Otherwise, feel free to share on a more kind of cultural level.
Yeah, okay. I guess some of the challenges for me over the years have been these environments, men are generally pretty supportive of the women that they're working with. But I think sometimes I find that men will subconsciously, like not intentionally, treat you in a way that, they will assume that you don't know how to use tools or put a radio together, and you kind of have to jokingly be like, oh, it's cool, bro, like, I know how to do that. And you see them think, oh, like, they didn't mean to do it. But subconsciously, because of the nature of men dominating the music industry, that's kind of the result of that. So it's being able to overcome that in a way that's helping them to learn without, out-fiercing them, I guess. And yeah, do you know what I mean? Just that kind of assumption that men have, particularly when you're outnumbered by them.
Yeah.
And another point as well is, with a lot of sexual assault and whatnot happening on these large-scale festivals, It's so important to have women in management, because if it's not handled in the right way, and when it's all men in management, like I've been in scenarios like that, it's really brought to light for me that it's another really strong reason that women in management in music is super important, because then we can lead the way and show the men like how to deal with these sensitive issues and you know, how to just treat each other on a more equal basis across the board.
And do you feel there's challenge or obstacles towards getting women in management at the moment, or have you seen something like that? Or?
I am seeing a turnaround, I think. Like, you know, for example, I work on the National Folk Festival in Canberra, and it's entirely women. And I started that job last year on International Women's Day, and like really made a point of letting them know that that was quite unique, that it was just all these women in management. There were no men at all, and that's quite unique in this industry, and it's special, you know. And they kind of, it hadn't really occurred to them, but on a broader level, when you're working on so many events, so it really is special. I guess there would be challenges on some level depending on the event, but events like Rainbow, I think that it's not really an issue anymore, and this year is a good example of that as well.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, you can give a round of applause to that. I feel like that's a beautiful insight into Rainbow and the culture, and also naming in that the change that we're seeing, like within the extended levels of this subculture, we are seeing changes, but actually that's not a very accurate representation of the world in general, and the westernized, especially the westernized modern kind of society that we are moving through. That's not necessarily what's happening in all areas, and I love the point that you brought up about that the awkwardness for men in the shift, you know, and that navigating the navigating of like, you know, not having to explain things and then feeling the shame when they do and it's not inappropriate, and how to navigate those worlds, because, you know, shame doesn't help anybody. No. And so it's really, I really like the way that you put it, and that there is an awkward situation on some level for a lot of people, because we're navigating new territory. We're bursting forwards and breaking down old paradigms and breaking down old patterns and ways of doing that are actually supportive and helpful with everybody in that. So yeah, thank you for bringing up that element of it. That's what it brought up for me anyway.
Great.
Beautiful. Does anybody else want to share challenges or obstacles that they have felt as women?
I think it's breaking tradition. So I'm speaking culturally in that, you know, in our culture there is separated men's business and women's business, and where men stand and where women stand. And coming forward to a contemporary society, and you look at contemporary issues and problems that arise, people always still look to the men for answers. Until what do you do if there's no men there to take control of the situation? So then you have to compromise, and then you have women who are stepping up into these roles, and it's kind of challenging that traditional view of going, men are the problem fixers, men know how to do this, men know how to do that, but without taking into account that, you know, if there isn't a male-dominated culture in an area that you're from, the reality is somebody has to do it.
Yeah. And thank you for naming that and for sharing that side of culture. Do you feel like that shift of women taking those more leadership roles is controversial, or is it being pretty, like, what's your experience of that?
I think it's been received 50-50. Everybody is really supportive on some levels. Like, you know, it depends about the level of your, like, you know, your obligations and your purpose, whether it be traditionally or on a contemporary scale. And I think it's just a concept that's more becoming the norm, because, you know, we're out here, we're doing these things, we're being a part of everything. Like even sitting up here on the table, this is a first for me, which is really amazing. So I do feel like among our own mob and the greater mobs that we engage with and the people that we encounter with are really open and transparent, and they're really accepting. But the reality is you're still going to have those certain individuals who have that mentality about how things should be done and where a woman's place ultimately is.
Can I ask further into that? Are you comfortable if I inquire a bit further into that?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you think that that perhaps those people, do you think as an issue it tangles up with the fear of losing culture, if it's breaking tradition, that it's losing culture?
I think it's kind of one of those responsibilities that has always stayed around. Not even talking from a non-traditional scale, like there has been encounters where I've had males or people that I've associated with who have turned around and go, women can't do that.
Right.
Actually, the biggest supporter I think out of all of it has been my dad, which is amazing, real positive. But like even as outsiders looking into a world, like, you know, the oldest living culture in the world, you're looking into it from a lens that really challenges your perspective and your beliefs. And I think a lot of that just comes with, you know, an uneducation or a misunderstanding of what it actually means.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for acknowledging the external view that I would, for example, hold from your culture. So thank you for that. Yeah. Cool. Does anybody else want to share? Beck?
Yeah, I might add to that. Because while I know what you're saying, like some of our mob just get real windy, like when it comes to breaking tradition, because we know how powerful our traditional culture is, and where we may not have been able to learn some of those traditions. I mean, literally, we were removed from our countries and punished for keeping tradition going. And so now we're getting bits and pieces of it back, and, you know, adding that in with all of the things that we did know and hold. You know, we're worried we might, in some cases, have missed a piece of the puzzle. And so we're really trying to be more cautious than anything of breaking our own law, because, you know, that's what we fear. Breaking the law of this land, that comes after you. Like, you know, it's not like if someone witnesses a crime, then you get dobbed in and then the law enforcement comes to you. If you commit a crime to the law of this land, there's no escape. No one has to see it. It's coming for you. So, you know, we are very cautious about not breaking tradition in that sense, although we are living in a modern world, and so there are certain roles that have shifted between males and females. And, you know, one of them, in a challenge that I was thinking of, some people might hold this view, that's men's business, and I was asked to do a smoking ceremony at a jail once, which I didn't really think much of until I was surrounded by 400 men enclosed in a jail, with maybe 4 security people just wandering around, and then it really kind of dawnted on me. And so I sang my song. I was like, I'm not gonna try and get everybody's attention to start to do what I'm here to do, as I wasn't sure how it was going to be received at all. So I just started singing, and then they kind of all gathered around. They were like, what's this? And did the smoking ceremony, and it was great. They made sure I had a feed afterwards and everything. But before that, there was a lot of tension there, where it was, what's this? A woman's coming to do a smoking ceremony. Wow. No, a woman just did a smoking ceremony. So, you know.
Beautiful.
And they all participated. Yeah.
Thank you. And again, another thing that's coming through that I'm noticing that's actually coming through from all of these things is that I feel like we're actually carving new territory as women in this generation, whether we are carving new territory for respect for elder women, or we're carving our respect as women within whatever culture we have, or as queer women. It's that we are actually we're stepping on new territory, and it's difficult it's difficult and it's challenging for everybody. It's challenging for the people who's had a dominant perhaps level in that territory, and it's challenging for us to face those like you said, that moment when you said about being surrounded by those 400. I mean, I don't know how you would have felt in that moment, but I know how I would have felt in that moment. You know, like, and it's amazing and powerful to be stepping forward in that and changing that world. So thank you for being a change maker in that.
I had to dig deep.
Does anyone down this end want to share their experiences of the challenges as women that you've faced?
My experiences when I'm coming into to start a project in a new festival, or when I'm coming back to a festival, there's a lot of men at the start. There's only usually a couple of women. I mean, I was here when I arrived the first week. I think I was the only female for about 4 or 5 days. And it's like, you know, you feel a bit awkward. Toilets are really messy. There's, you know, shower blocks messy, but you just sort of ignore it. But what I usually do when I come on a site, and I'm a really practical person, is that I build my mafia quickly. Meaning that I find the males that I know from previous festivals, or the males that I know that I can lean on them, because I can't lift, you know, 2 sacks of 20 kilo cements on each shoulder. You know, I can't do it. Physically, my ovaries don't let me lift that weight. I'm just like, you feel it crunch. So I always find the person, you know, the male, because there's always men in the group, even though if they are pretending to be macho or whatever, that would just stand aside and help. And then if that doesn't work, I trade beer. And then, you know, I start getting their respect because I go, yeah, she gives us beer. So very quickly, I work out my mafia, and that gives me the space to know, okay, where I can go and where I can't go, until more women come to the space. But there's always in a small group, there's 1 or 2 males that don't mind you literally leaning on them. You know, don't mind you calling in for a favor. And sometimes it's like a continual favor. There's a chap that works here, Tim. Oh my God, I don't know how many favors, you know, I kept saying, can you lift this? Can you lift that? Old wood, this wood, that wood. But yeah, to the females, create your mafia quickly. Mafia in a good sense, huh? Create your network.
Yeah. Beautiful, thank you. I think especially when we're talking about women's issues, it's very easy, I feel like, for perhaps people who identify as men in the audience to start to feel a little bit attacked. Like maybe we're talking about you personally, but I want to just take a moment to say that we're talking about a cultural thing, and we're also talking about like deeply ingrained truths that we've all been taught, no matter what your gender identity, things that we're all having to unpack. And so the way that men are necessarily showing up and making you necessarily not feel so safe and have to create your mafia, isn't that they're intentionally being macho or no, not at all. It's just something that has been taught to all of us that as a culture we're now having to unpack. So thank you so much for bringing that to the surface, because I think that's a really important level, and the vulnerability in that. So thank you. Yeah.
Actually, what you've been speaking about really resonates with me from from 20 years ago, to now. How the music and the festival industry was 20 years ago for women. Very much there were so few women doing anything at all. Maybe the woman was the cook in the crew kitchen, and everyone else was mainly men. And that just was the nature of 20 years ago across a lot of industries. And there's been such a radical change in certain parts of the music and arts and culture industry. So women have thrived in certain elements, and then there's still areas that we're still kind of a little bit less involved in. I'd say that, in the art side, in the permaculture, the environment, everything that's nurturing about a festival, women are thriving at Rainbow and thriving at a lot of music festivals, but we still have a little bit of a way to go perhaps in the actual music part of the music festival. Like, that's one area where there's still a lot of power held in one gender. And women have not really, we haven't cracked the music quite as well as we've cracked other parts of our industry. But we've made such strides, and I think for young women who want to get involved in any part of the music industry, it's a way more open for women to get involved. It's a lot more respect given to women as artists and as managers and as creators and as holders of culture, as holders of environmental law, as sustainability. So the shift has been so radical in 20 years. It's almost flipped itself upside down in many ways. So it's really been quite amazing.
Beautiful. And I want to just, 20 years really isn't that long, is it? It's not a
No.
long time.
One
it's really
generation.
not. Yeah, one generation, less than one generation, really, 20 years. And
Yeah, that's right. We live till 60 now.
yeah,
not
exactly.
20.
It's like a quarter of a generation. But also, really, this point that women haven't, that we haven't cracked the music industry yet, or maybe the music industry hasn't allowed us in fully
Yeah,
yet,
we haven't
is
been
the languaging
allowed
I'm going to
yet.
use on that.
Yep.
And I'm actually going to open that because that's a really sore point for me as an artist, you know. And I'd love to explore that a little bit of why maybe you think that might be a thing, or how, and what we mean by that. I mean, how many headlining acts on the main stage do we have that are women this year? Does anyone know?
Yeah, then we've got Closy. She's from France.
Cool.
She's
Awesome.
wicked. She's a major female headliner here.
Is she on the main stage?
I actually don't remember what stage she's on, sorry. But she's also headlining Earth Frequency Festival in Queensland
Great, awesome.
next February, and she is actually the headliner.
Beautiful.
So it's really great to see a headlining female
Yeah.
DJ. Yeah.
Because I have full respect for Rainbow Serpent, but I do hunger to see more female artists on the main stage, right?
And I think you're not alone, and it has been something that has been discussed for decades, in the sense of why can't we have more women, more equality. There's so many amazing women artists out there that are superstars. I mean, they're not obscure artists, they're superstars. And there seems to be, and this is a personal, I can't say any fact behind it, but I believe in my heart that the perception from some of the people who make these decisions is that women won't draw an audience. And I think that is a big misconception, but I really believe that is sitting at the forefront of why women haven't quite been given the same amount of time on the stage as men get. And it's not true, because we go to Europe and women are just as headliners as men, but in Australia I think we're still behind that, and I could be so wrong, and please tell me I'm wrong, but that's been, I think that's been the gist of many a discussion on why can't we have her. No, that just won't pull a crowd. And it's like, hang on a minute. So,
yeah, totally.
Can I just say, I wonder where that misconception comes from.
I don't know.
Who made that up, and why is it stuck? As if females don't draw crowds as well. There's no actual factual
We got a
reasoning
crowd.
behind that.
We got a crowd.
Yeah, and there's a great mix of
Check out this bathing crowd.
Yeah, genders.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's an interesting that one. How do we crack this theory that has no backing, no logical reasoning behind it?
Absolutely.
But why females won't draw a crowd? Is it because all the promoters are male and it's just something that they've thought and stuck with? I'm quite curious about that.
Yeah, I'd be
Beautiful.
really keen to find out more, actually.
Well, this actually is leading into my next inquiry, which is solutions. So how do we as women, and what are our concepts as women, how do we see whether it's solutions for what's happening, ways in the moment for women? Maybe there are women in the audience who want to work in the music industry. What advice do we have for them to be able to get into the music industry and the arts industry, or to even step forward in culture if they're feeling, for whatever culture they have, they're feeling a block as a woman? Or even as a larger scale, what can we do as a culture perhaps just to create this shift? And I think that your inquiry there was beginning to step into that. So I'd love to ask that, whatever area it is that you feel out of what we just discussed, that you want to step forward with. I'd love to hear any theories or feelings that you have, either for ourselves or for the people in the audience who are hungering for that in themselves, or as a culture where we can shift that and create solutions.
So speaking as a performer, before I got into all my other job stuff, I used to be a professional performer down in Melbourne, and the stereotype of what they embodied a female performer to be, how they held themselves, how they looked, mainly how they looked, they were after a certain type. If they didn't have that certain type, they weren't going to hire you. And at that point in time, I'm not ridiculously fit. I'm curvy and I have tattoos. It did not fit any stereotype, and as a result, I missed out on major contracts because of that, because it wasn't what they were specifically looking for. So they were selling off, performers as these people who, are super healthy and super fit, and they have a certain look. And I think especially for the commercial industry, it's created a huge ripple effect through to, like, you know, things like not specifically Rainbow Serpent, but other music festivals where they embody a certain stereotype of how you should look, how you should behave, what censorship you have on certain issues. Like, obviously, as a woman, you're expected to maintain some form of censorship the moment you open your mouth. And that is my biggest pet hate.
Be nice.
And so, like, my brother is a DJ, and he draws crowds, but all the women that play with him or next to him are all the same. They all look the same. They all behave the same. And I think any advice for any, like, young woman or just any woman wanting to break into any part of that industry is to smash that stereotype right out of the ballpark, because it's the music execs and things like that put through those promotions, and they're the people you need to get to first. That's why I think that's why a lot of things aren't being heard, because the commercial music industry has just impacted everything else so severely. You have to look a certain way. You have to, you know, you have to upkeep that. So we won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing here is representation, is this concept of how we are represented as women. Does that feel correct for you? So then I would like to add, if you don't mind, in there, that you're adding this call out of, like, you know, smash those stereotypes, but also if you are someone in the audience, and there are a lot of people in the audience who run workshops, who put on your own events, who put promos and stuff out there in the world, think about the imagery you're choosing. What women are you representing in your imagery? Are you representing the same style of woman that is represented by mainstream culture, or are you smashing that? Are you choosing to depict women of color? Are you choosing to depict queer couples? Are you choosing to depict indigenous women, larger women, older women, younger women? Like, where it's an active choice that we have to start making, to start shifting that. Because even myself, I was talking to one of the visionary artists, and when I draw women, I draw the same kind of woman all the time, and she's got long flowing hair and big busty, like big lips and like curvy and tiny waists and big boobs. I'm like, why am I drawing that woman? Like, I don't want to keep drawing that woman. And so we have to check ourselves in how we're showing up as people as well. So yeah, thank you for that point. Anybody else about solutions?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to kind of plug a sister right now. She's doing a magazine called Ascension. Sasha Sarago has the first Indigenous and ethnic women's magazine, and it's just the first because of this one way of beauty that we're constantly being fed. You know, you have to be really skinny, you have to have straight hair, and she was like, what about makeup for my color skin? What about products for my curly hair? You know, and what about not being, you know, this tiny frame, you know? And so it was really about celebrating women's beauty in not just in all of its physical forms, but in understanding its in internal form as well. And so she was out to try and beat this representation as well. So you know, she brought up things I'd never even heard of. There's this massive percentage of people that are bleaching their skin because a certain color, it may not be, you know, white, it may not be black, but a certain type of skin color is the ideal beauty thing, you know. And, you know, if you're ticking all these boxes that you have all of these things, then for sure you're thinking you're going to get that gig over someone who doesn't. And yeah, I'm just hearing that that's something, yeah, we can all consciously change and go check out my sister's magazine.
Could you say her name again, clearly, for everyone, and the name of the magazine? Could you say her name and the magazine again,
Sasha Sarago, Ascension Magazine. It's a collective beauty and women's lifestyle culture magazine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm hearing a lot about representation, of visual representation, and shifting culture in that way. And I'd love to ask a little bit of the rest of the community around, like, because we would start talking about talent and getting talent out there, and how also voices and how we can get our voices out there. Do you have any advice for people in the audience who might want to get their voices out, or any concepts of how we can, as a greater community, start to shift that?
I just think we have to forge forward as women. Like, I almost don't pay attention to I don't know, the differences that maybe others see in terms of, because I'm a woman and in a strong management role or whatever, and I just kind of bypass it and just continue to do my thing with faith in myself, belief in myself. And there's a lot of different things that can shackle you, from men's opinions about you to other women that want to take you down, and I just don't feed that beast, whether it's men or women, for whatever reason. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like brush it off, just keep on, keeping.
Beautiful. And find like going back to the original story that was going on here about the creating a sisterhood around you of strong women as well.
Absolutely.
Like find strong women around you. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Down this end.
Just quickly, if you are a woman that likes the idea of being part of a build, I would say do what men are doing and get your tickets. Okay, because a lot of us come in without the tickets that are needed for building, which is your rigging ticket. Learn how to tie knots. I'm lucky because I entered in an area that was very specific, and not many people knew how to do what I was doing at the time. But I still don't know how to tie knots. I did not tie the knots on that swing. Okay, because if I tied it, whoever sat on it would have fallen. So, learn how to tie your knots, get your rigger's certificate, get your boom certificate so you can drive a boom around. And it might not be the area that you're interested in festivals, but it gets you in the door. And I'm talking like a different in wage. So, you might come in as a $200 a day person. You've got tickets, you come in as a $350 a day. And this is in most festivals around the world, at Eclipse Global Festival, at Boom Festival, if you've got your riggers tickets. So you might not like it, but you've got them. And then when they're looking through applications, they're going, hey, look, this chick has got all the riggers. She looks interesting. And you actually might like painting or art or gardening, but it gets your foot in the door. And you do it the first year, and then you just start networking or creating a mafia. But yeah, get your tickets, and and this is like pre-build. Obviously, this is stuff where it's, weight-bearing stuff. Get stronger. Make sure you're not going to hurt yourself. And it's practical things that, you're re-educating yourself to do builds.
Beautiful, thank you. I think what I'm coming out is like self-empowerment, like actually us stepping forwards as women and people and just empowering ourselves with the tools we learn. I also want to name, I did another panel on women in the music industry last year, and someone did make a point of like, if you want to be in the music industry, like she was a music producer, and she said it's actually very hard to learn to produce music, because every time she asked one of her friends, who were all men, to teach her to produce music, they thought that she was coming on to them. And it became, and so that she'd turn up hoping to learn, and it would end up being, and it wasn't just her story, it was a story I actually heard from a few people. It's also naming that in this there's an empowerment, but there's also like, speaking to people of other gender identities, if a woman comes to you and says, like especially men, if a woman comes to you and says, I want to learn this, maybe don't take it as a come on. Maybe just take it as like, okay, I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to support you to learn. Because I think that's actually one of the big obstacles is that it's all good and well to say, yeah, learn and get better, but if you can't learn because every time you try and learn you're being smalled and belittled and made smaller, it's actually very hard to do that. So thank you for the empowerment on that, and also for anybody else who has the skills, share them, teach them, be the change in that, be the one who's making that change. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really totally agree with that, and I would add from my experience was to become successful and to have longevity in a tricky industry anyway. It's the music industry and the arts industries are highly competitive, incredibly competitive, and I think any qualification that allows you to be the best at your craft, if you've chosen a certain trajectory that you want to follow, then you make sure it is competitive. You have to be as best you can, learning and surrounding yourself with the best possible team and people like your mafia. People who succeed here are genuinely talented. I think you don't get away with it for very long if you're not. You can't I was going to swear then, sorry.
Do it, please.
You can't lie about your abilities in this industry, because it's one of the few hands-on industries in the world where you still create by yourself, and it's labour intensive. It's not, yes, we use technology now, but generally it's intelligence, creativity and collaboration, no matter what part you're in. So if any young person wanted to be involved in the music industry, use what your talent is and just go forward and just keep getting better. And I think most people genuinely will succeed, because you can't last if you're not good. So yeah, it's exactly really just following on from what all you ladies, I totally agree.
Beautiful, thank you. So in this, and just discussing the kind of thing that's coming up, I'm just thinking about the cultural, something that's culturally happening at the moment, and that's with, I don't know if you know about the Gillette campaign and this idea that we talked about shame and how shame doesn't actually support. So in that idea, we've just given words out to the women in the audience, and I wonder if maybe we can speak to the men in the audience from a place of love and support, and say, and not shame, but actually going, if you do want to support and you do want to be part of the change, here's a little tidbit from me of how me as a woman in my area would really actually appreciate that support. Only if you feel too that you have that to give, but maybe it might be like holding a light for people to walk towards is how I'm seeing it. So does anyone feel to do that as well?
We love you, man. We wouldn't be here without you, obviously. But yeah, it's the same thing. I like the pre-build. That weight bearing is that a lot of men's bodies were built to lift weights, and the fact is, it's a physiological thing. We have ovaries, and if when you're lifting a heavy weight, and if you're not a female weightlifter, you actually feel, like I said before, your ovaries crunch, and you see a bit of a in somebody's face. So yeah, for me, it's just like keep doing what you're doing, keep helping, keep supporting, and things will be wonderful. Because I actually think that muscles are really cool, and I still like using mine. But I always need support as well, as a lot of women.
Oh, thank you. So what I'm hearing there is, like, even outside of gender, like if people look like they're struggling, like whatever body type they have, we support each other, and we support each other, and we offer the body that we have to support in your area. So thank you. Yeah.
I'm actually working pretty balanced at the moment with men and women, and all of us have a great working relationship. And I'm honestly working with some brilliant minds in art and multimedia in some of the projects. And one of my favourite, best ever colleagues is a male artist. And I think that we get on and work together well is because actually it doesn't seem to come across that I'm a woman and he's a man. It's just that we work respectfully, we collaborate, we communicate well. We don't let each other down when there's a deadline. Basically it's just this respectful process. And I'm working with quite a few men and women, and they're all pretty similar now. Like, we're quite similar in that respect. Like, we collaborate really well. So I guess if we drop that idea that yes, we are physically different, men and women, but we're also very much humans that are the same. So if we drop the crap and we just work well, then we can just progress in harmony as a team rather than in separate entities, I suppose, or separate beings that have made up quite a lot of differences. But having said that, I don't have to pick up anything, and I haven't had to hammer anything or been up a ladder for probably 20 years. So physically, of course, I'm not negating that at all.
Beautiful. Yeah. In that, I guess, just thank you. My brain went somewhere, then I went somewhere else. Anybody else want to share?
Yeah, I guess my advice to all you deadly men out there, and to all the women, is let's just do what complements each other. We're all different. All of us women are different. All you men are different in what our capabilities are and, levels of understanding and things. Like, I grew up with 2 older brothers. I was always hanging around the guys, and I was always determined to be doing everything that they did just to be, equal and to show that I wasn't that different and that I could do it. Obviously, that worked until puberty. Then there was like this much difference between us, and yeah, I got a awakening. But all of our roles, you know, to me, I don't see so much of a generic gender divide. It's all very fluid, and we all move in and out, but it really just takes understanding and working out the time with each individual where you fit with them. Another thing I would say too is if you are in a male-dominated place, just maybe keep an eye out and be aware and consider it. I know when I was fresh out of uni and I was studying a ranger job, and I was in a room full of men it was like 40 general firefighters and rangers. And then on top of that, we were in the council chambers, so then there was 40 white men in pictures all around me as well. So it's just like generations of just male domination around me. And I wanted to contribute to the conversation. And I knew it was not a space for that. So at least I had my uncle there with me, and I told him my idea, and he suggested it for everyone. So at least I felt my voice was heard. It didn't have to be coming out of my mouth, but my contribution was heard. Next time after that, then he might say, actually, Beck would like to say something. You know, and sometimes if I try and say, people would talk over the top. And it can be a simple little thing like that. It's just enabling women's voices to be heard. If other people are not ready to hear, and you are a male in this situation and you can see it, that's that simple. I believe Ginny was going to talk next.
Well, that's all right. It flows quite well with what all of you guys have said. You know, it's just share information the way that you would with your male counterparts, like just the same way. You know, like mansplaining can happen, again, like I was saying earlier, subconsciously. There's so many great supportive men in this industry, but they might just subconsciously assume and go to like mansplain, or there's a difference between, you know, teaching somebody and mansplaining. You guys know what I mean? So I guess, like women and men, we need to be able to share our information and share our knowledge with one another to prop each other up, so that we're all successful. I forget what else I was going to say, but...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Been a long day.
It's hot.
Do you mind if I summarize a few things that have come out the points that I really showing in this, the fluidity of gender, that gender expression isn't necessarily as divided as we used to perceive it to be. So the unpacking of the presumptions that we have over people and their bodies, especially women. So when you see a woman not necessarily presuming they don't know, and also this idea of in spaces that are very men-dominated, being aware of the dynamic that's happening around you. You know, like as a woman, I can't be in a space dominated by men and not be aware of it. I can't watch movies and not be aware of the way women are treated in movies. I can't be now living in Melbourne and go to walk home at night without not being aware of what's happening in Melbourne around the safety of women. And if you are a man, maybe just actually beginning to unpack and begin to try and see that perspective as well. So in those spaces, we're more aware. Does that sound like a fair summary of some of the things that are being said?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope you don't mind me summarising. I just
No. Brain fried.
So yeah, it was a very hot day. So, we have a bit of time. I have one more question that I'd like to end with before we end at 6 o'clock. But we have a bit of time to open up to some questions from the audience. Are you all comfortable with that? Yeah. Question from the audience? Okay, does anyone in the audience have a question for our panel? And I will come out and give you a microphone. You're all brain fried too, I know, but like you have this opportunity to ask these incredible women something. Yes, beautiful, at the back. If you want to come forward, that would support me.
It's been hard to make people feel they can pass it around.
Hi. Before my question, I just want to say I am in the industry as well for over 20 years, and I'm a man. I would like to agree with most of the things that were said here, and I think it's great that you're coming out and opening this space for more women in the industry, and I would very much like to see more of that. I agree that it is a very competitive industry. I also agree that women are more collaborative. I just can't agree when you say it's about talent. I don't think it's about talent at all. I think, and when we say that it's about talent, I think I would like to hear more how does that sound to other women in the audience, because when you say, oh, it's about talent, so it's a competitive industry, and we inside are very collaborative, but to get in there, you gotta have talent. And I personally don't believe it's about talent. After 2 decades or more working in the industry, I think it's about something else. And when people hear that it's about talent, that might just take them off the idea that they might actually get into the industry because they might feel they don't have it. And I think that everybody has talent.
And I think maybe I agree with what you're saying, because perhaps talent, the way I was referring to it, isn't about necessarily a talent like a musician, meaning like that sort of musical, innate, gifted talent that, not in that way. I meant talent in the sense of we do all have a really good ability at something. I think we're all here on this earth for a purpose, but to put that less hippie way, we all have really good talents. Some of us are very good organisers, some of us are very good at making things, some of us are very practical, some of us are very visionary. Like, we all have, in that sense, talent. So what I meant was, all right, yes, there is luck, and some people without any ability do end up doing quite well because they can talk. Their talent is telling people that they're talented, and that might be enough, you know. I didn't want to say that, but I have now. It's true though. But what I meant is, in the sense of talent, is find your ability and use that talent and that ability and focus on that. And you might not succeed. Not all of us succeed in life, but you will probably do well, because in the end, people do well. It can do well if they strive and they find their ability and they hone those skills and they develop those talents, those skills. That was more what I was trying to refer to in that sense.
I thought so.
Yes.
And my question was.
Oh, I didn't answer it. Sorry, I thought I did.
There was. I disagree. I disagree with that point.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, please. Why don't you explain why you think that it's not a good point? Like.
My question was, what can women do to actually change that view, that it's about talent? Because like we watch in one of the major parties in the country that doesn't have enough women representatives, and that's what they say. They say, well, it's about talent, and we just don't have enough liberal, talented women that want to be representatives. So I wonder what women can do about that, and tell us what can we do about that too. You know, it's about quotas. We need to open up quotas in there. Yeah. How do we solve that problem?
Response to that?
Cool.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so I'm going to respond to that. Yeah. So I'm going to bring it back to this level of opportunities. There is that excuse gets used in the industry that there's not enough women talent out there. It's absolute bullshit. And if there is a struggle for women to learn, it's because there's a struggle for women to get the opportunities to learn this stuff. Yeah. And that goes back to that comment of like, if a woman wants to learn something, teach her, support her, teach her in the way that she wants to be taught. There is incredible talent out there. If you are booking for something, look for women who are fucking talented. There's a whole world, and 50, like, there's so many women in this planet. There is no way that the talent doesn't exist. That excuse is bullshit. Go out of your way as a promoter to find talented women, to find people who are underrepresented and represent them. Step forward in that level, because that excuse is bullshit and it doesn't stand anymore.
Can I ask which country you work in, or are you working in Australia in the industry or in another country?
Thank you.
So can you see a difference perhaps in Australia, between Australia and Europe, the way women are booked? Because I think it's not necessarily across the whole music industry about the talent. Like Australia we are underrepresented because of a broader cultural, we've got a broader cultural issue around how women are perceived in a lot of industries, whereas Europe's a little bit more open. So we need to change our whole country, really, in a way, not just our one particular industry, to see more representation, I suppose.
As a European, I would say it's worldwide.
Oh, it is. Yeah, okay.
I could add something to that. I have an artist, Christina Dejuan, working in the permaculture area. You can see one of her paintings just behind you, and she also has a painting to the side. Now, she's a very, her paintings have a lot of vaginas in her paintings and breasts and things like that. We had to tone it down for Rainbow. So I think it's saying something about, and she's a Spanish artist, a young woman, and you see her paintings, you can Google her work, and there's there's always vaginas and yeah, I had to tone it down. I had to say to her, "Sorry, Christina, too much vag here. You need to change it." And she's like, "Really?" Like, this is crazy. And I was like, "Yeah, I know, but the Australians aren't ready for it."
Are you ready for vaginas?
Lots of.
I'm ready for vaginas.
Okay, hang on. I was up here and I saw some of the face squirm then. Okay, some people went, yeah, others went, eh. So yeah, maybe it's also just a part of, us being, being sensitive and knowing that it's natural. I mean, all she was going to paint was Mother Earth giving birth to humanity, to everything. And yeah, maybe it's just, knowing that our bodies, I don't know, Australian culture is a bit strange because, like I said, I'm Australian. I've been working in Europe and Brazil a lot too, and people are a lot more relaxed about female parts and showing it in paintings and things like that. And we're still quite young. I don't know, So yeah, if you're interested in talking to her, she's doing a workshop, and she'll talk to you all about painting vaginas.
Beautiful. I'm looking at our time, and I have something, and this actually moves very smoothly into our thing. We have one more question over here. So I would love to get a question from this person, Zay, there with their hand up. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you so much for being part of this panel. It's amazing, and I've loved hearing all of your stories. I have a question. I've also been in very male-dominated spaces throughout my life. Most of them I've felt pushed out of, or I've not felt comfortable enough to stay there. So I've always left and found something else, especially places that where I've worked. I was wondering, I think it's just so incredible what you've done to build yourself and do what you've done to get where you are in such a male-dominated arena. I was wondering, what would you say is the number one skill that you've had to learn or grow or develop within you to be able to speak up and get your voice heard and be able to probably own that respect from men?
That gets twinkle fingers from me as a question.
I'd say asserting yourself kindly, in that compassionate way, and kind of not really paying attention when they are doing that male-dominated, you're surrounded by them, but kind of, like I was saying earlier, just forging on regardless with belief in yourself, and when you need to sort of stand up for yourself, doing it in sort of a kind, assertive, compassionate way that's not, with the shame and the guilt, you know what I'm saying? But not feeding it too much either, not with greatly offended, even though maybe you are. So there's that balance between taking that offense that you might feel and turning it into a way that you can kind of react in a way that would educate them or sort of show up what they're doing in a nicer way that maybe they'll take it in and therefore have respect for you as well, and then just move on. Do you kind of know what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I get it. That's
Cool.
awesome.
I'd say patience. Patience and being able to maintain an objective point of view. Because obviously, the moment that you start feeling excluded in a male-dominated setting, you're just nuts, screw this, I'm on my way, not going to deal with this. When there could be bigger problems that are situated at the root as to why as well. And it's kind of looking at that going, maybe they aren't as open-minded or up to date with kind of how accepting we are becoming of the male and female space. But in saying that, going back to your comment before, Australia is very conservative. We are very conservative on views surrounding sexuality and saying vagina without somebody squirming. I bet you somebody squirmed then, for sure. And, you know, it's being able to have a look. Yeah, it's being able to have a look and just kind of go, okay, it's nothing against you personally. Like, you know, if it's a culture that you've walked into and it's the way that they've always been, it's maintaining that patience and, you know, being persistent and just going, you know what, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. This is where I want to be. I'm just going to keep knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking and just annoy the shit out of them until they actually do something about it.
Are you talking a little bit about resilience here?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a bit of a word, but it is resilience, I think. And also, some people will never change, or I'm not saying never change, but some people aren't as open to change as others. So I think in some environments, there's always a good chance if you're resilient and you continue with authentic work practice and authentic to self, things can change. But there is also, when things can't change, having the strength to move out with dignity and not regret, take something with you that you've learnt. So you can, if you're an intuitive, aware, conscious, or you try to use those attributes, you'll be able to make a choice in your path, you know. But resilience is a good way to start, and a good way to start so that you can move forward.
I would say find out who's the alpha and knock them out.
Mine was going to be similar to that. Put your feet on the ground, breathe.
But usually there is someone that has a hold of the situation, and you know, I think really understanding where that's coming from, why, you know, they're not letting you in, and sometimes that can be it can be threatening. It could be, you might lose your space. And so it sounds silly, but having to nurture while you assert your place and understanding what their roles are and respecting those things. So you're leading by example and going, I respect these are your things that you're good at, and these are the things that I'm good at, and I'm kindly asserting that you will not be overstepping my line or pushing me down in this area. And I'll, you know, it's give and take, and I'll let that go, but I won't let this go. Yeah.
And then roar.
I don't know. It's a bit deeper.
But, you know, even in a large men's group, there's always a lot of men that are have sympathy for the female movement, or, you know, for females in general. And you just got to spot them out, work with them, find, you know, gather your strength as well, finding males in the male dominant group that agree. And I'm happy to see a lot of males nodding in the group here, because just because it's all males doesn't mean, but seriously, my thing is put your 2 feet on the ground and breathe from your belly a couple of times, really deep. And the person that's harassing you, because some of the phrases or some of the horrible things that are said to me at the beginning of some sites, you know, when I was younger, I probably would have walked out and cried and said, I can't believe that someone just said this. And today I get like, I'm more like, fuck you. You know, it's 2018 and we shouldn't be talking to each other like this. You know, I'm expecting evolution from our species. And they, you know, and a lot of men get like, whoa. And then they say, oh, she's a feminist. And I say, I'm more than a feminist. So yeah, keep your feet on the ground and seriously breathe it out. And then you just give yourself a second to breathe it out. And I say that because I'm a bit fiery, and, you know, if I probably had a drink, I probably want to slap him. But luckily at work we don't drink. But yeah, just hold your space.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And as a final tone, can I just say, please never use feminist as a negative attack on anybody. Just don't do it. It's just not okay. That's my personal thing. Thank you so much. Can we have a massive round of applause for these incredible women? I want to take a moment to acknowledge the courage and the vulnerability it takes for each of you to speak from your own perspective and your own journeys, whether that is speaking from culture, speaking from industry, from age, from gender, whatever that is, from sexuality. And just thank you so much for being willing to be that vulnerable in front of the audience. I have one last thing. We have about 7 minutes left. And I have one thing that I wanted to end with, because we did mention at the beginning the fact that the women, there's the culture of like competition and ripping each other down. And for me, I'm really passionate about rising each other up as women. And I feels like from what you're all saying, you're all in that too. So I'd love us to just go along. And if you could each, if there's a woman out there in music, in arts, in industry, or in culture that is doing work that you think is incredible and should be seen, whether it inspires you, whether it's been part of your journey, or whether it's someone you think is rising, I'd love us to just go along and just state who they are and what they do. And if you're in the audience, take note, write it on your phone, take a note down, remember it in your head, and go and Google them. Write it down as soon as you leave here if you have to, and look these women up, and let's actually support some women in the world. So yeah, I'd love to just go along and name the women that you want to celebrate.
Yeah, at the moment, like I said, the young artist from Spain, Cristina de João, she's just her work is not. It's in between psychedelic and Earth Mother. So yeah, it's just interesting. Like I said, she's here. You'll get to meet her. I think it's tomorrow. Her workshop is from 1:30 to 3:30, and she'll just give you lots of reasons why she paints vaginas, and she's really interesting to listen to.
So her name again?
Cristina de João.
Beautiful.
De João.
Thank you.
Cristina.
I'm thinking of an old colleague and very, very good friend of mine. His name's Sally Donnelly, and she worked her way up through the DJ industry. She ended up producing music, and now she runs, in Germany, she runs a booking agency for Denox and some of the top German stars. And she's done that with so much dignity and so much friendliness and so much grace. And she's always got a smile, and I just think she's always been a pleasure to work with. So this panel has made me think of her today, and if you're ever wanting to book Denox, just get in touch with Sally.
Say her name again one more time for us.
Sally Donnelly.
Sally Donnelly. Awesome.
So there is a South Australian female DJ who goes by the name of Violet Eve, DJ Violet Eve. I've been following her stuff for a while, and I think this year is probably the first or the second time that she's actually playing for Esoteric, which is absolutely amazing. She breaks every single stereotype that I've ever spoken about, and she is probably, she is a lovely, lovely human being. She has all her social media plugins, so DJ Violet Eve, and it's about making sure we can get local as well. She may be across the state, but still Australian. We got this.
Beautiful, thank you.
I love this question. You prompted me. I wanted to do this anyway. But yeah, I want to acknowledge Jessie Lloyd, who was going to be on this panel. I'd put her name up. I think she's an amazing singer, songwriter, historian. She's gone out to a lot of missions all over Australia, sat down with those elders and learnt their stories of some of the sad things, some of the good things, some of the survival things that they were singing in the time they were on the missions, and they had no human rights. So these songs are the missing part between our traditional culture and our songs that we're singing today. This is the missing thing, and nobody else that I know of in Australia is doing this. And she's going out there as a woman in a choir, amazingly talented woman, and she's re-educating all of us, just hearing the daily life stories that she sings, and to be able to go out to all these communities and follow the protocols and get permission to sing them and do justice, to me that's amazing. And she's an awesome storyteller, and yeah, so she's playing here tonight at 9:15 actually. 9:15 right here.
Beautiful. So her name again?
Jessie Lloyd, Mission Songs Project.
Beautiful. Thank you so
come.
much.
And she's really a great entertainer.
Awesome.
The first strong woman that came to mind is Sampa the Great, because she's so she's got so much strength in her performance. And I mean, she, you know, her genre is somewhat hip hop as well, which is very male dominated. And she's so fierce in her hip hop and her spoken word. And she's surrounded by great females and men as well. And she speaks, you know, so much about her culture and about women. And it's just, I feel like her message is really getting through to a mainstream crowd as well. And she's supported by a really strong woman I know called Cyrene. She goes by Cyrene Ice Creamy, I think. And she is just like this powerhouse of a woman who supports so many other women, whether it's industry or musicians. She's Melbourne-based and also has a lot of influence around her culture. She's a Maori woman. So just this multifaceted strengths that these women in the industry are actually like being able to step forward and have influence with, and I find that really inspiring.
Beautiful, thank you. So again, Sampa the Great and Cyrene.
Yes.
Yes.
Cyrene Ice Creamy.
Thank you so much. Can we have one more massive round of applause for these incredible voices and women? Thank you so much, each of you. I'm going to go along and say each of their names. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge, thank you for acknowledging Jessie Lloyd, who wasn't able to make it today. And also Hannah was also supposed to be on this panel. She's an incredible producer and live musician, and she will be performing throughout the festival as well, so check her out. She unfortunately wasn't able to join us last minute, but the wonderful Ginny joined in last minute for her, so thank you for that. So just going along this beautiful list, we have, I'm looking at my list so I get everyone's names right. We've got Lucy Legan here, thank you very much. We have Beck Phillips, who is down here. I'm going along this list here now. We've got Raquel Kerr here. Raquel. We have Lynne Donnelly here, Lynne, thank you. And we have Ginny Quirk at the end, thank you so much, Ginny. My name is Fleassy Malay. Come and speak to any of us or check in if we want to be spoken to, because we might be a bit fried. But I'm welcoming you to come speak to me. I hope you have a beautiful day. Drink lots of water, stay safe, and rise every woman up that you feel like you can. Thank you.
Thanks, Fleassy.
Well done,
Yeah, thank you.